Okay, we're at Siman Kuvav Halchalaf, and really that Siman, that Sif is about Efshel Sechte, and I'm not going to get to that till next time. I'm going to be talking today and next time about something called surface propagations. I'll explain to you what that is in a minute.
Yeah, I'm looking up in Google. I couldn't figure out what it was.
Okay. So you'll have to wait till I explain it to you. And the second half of it is going to have to do with Efshel Sechte. It has lots to do with kashas. Okay, I don't know what Google said, but it has lots to do with kashas. And that is like this. When there's a whole world out there of scientists trying to propagate microorganisms, okay, little things, and trying to make them grow into something else. So then we use them in food and all over the place. We do all kinds of stuff with them. The typical way that happens is they take the microorganism, they take this thing, and they put it into a soup usually of sugar, of glucose, and it makes more of itself, okay? Or it makes something else that we want, okay? One or the other, that's what it does. That's not what we're talking about today, okay? Today we're talking about a different way of doing that, not the regular way. That's the typical, normal, how most of these things are done. What we're talking about, when instead of putting it into like a soup, into this big vat full of sugar, instead, they grow it on top of something. Okay, they propagate it on the surface of something. It's called surface propagation. They grow it on top of something. Okay, there's some kind of a substrate. It's called something that's there and it's growing on. Okay, and the one that you probably heard, the name you probably heard before, it's called koji fermentation. Okay, which is they do it a lot in Japan. And what they do is they take wheat bran. They make what's called a bed of wheat bran. They lay out wheat bran, and then they sprinkle this microorganism on top of it. And it grows on top of it. Okay, it doesn't get mixed in with the bran. It just grows on top of it and makes more of itself, or makes whatever they're trying to make on top of it. Okay.
What's the difference with the wheat bran?
It draws some nutrition from it. Obviously, there's something to it. Okay, it has some connection to it. Other people in Japan, like that's the thing that they do it from wheat bran, which is of course very relevant to us because of the chametz question, potential
chametz. Standard thing they use for koji fermentation.
That's a standard. Yeah. Also, people do it. There are people who do it on rice or breadcrumbs or other things, okay? But wheat bran is the one that's the most of our concern, okay? Lots of people do it on rice also in Japan. Lots of things happen on rice. But wheat bran is a common thing. We're going to assume that wheat bran is considered to be chametzik. It's actually Shalom Hilchas Pesach. We talked about this a million years ago because there's a din in Hagol's Kalim about using kalim that are made with wheat bran. Okay, and that's one of the rayas that wheat bran can become chametz. It's a machlokes nachronim, where the bran in a wheat kernel, there's the part we eat called the endosperm, and then around it there's a couple of layers. Okay, and the bran is one of the more outer more layers, and there's machlokes nachronim whether that the Mishmur says it can become chametz. There's a machlokes exactly whether it can or cannot become chametz. We're going to work the assumption that it can become chametz. Okay, so when you make this koji fermentation, this propagation, you have this bran growing there. You have bran sitting there. It doesn't to us look like it changed at all, but there's like mold growing on top of it. There's stuff growing on top of it. Okay, and the question is, if it grew on chametz, that's our main concern. Is if it grew on chametz, does it become chametzik? Okay, is that thing that grew on the top, is that considered chametzik also? Okay. The same thing is also you might have seen more likely is when you grow something in a petri dish. Okay, like you take a throat culture, they put it onto a petri dish. They take this dish that's sitting there that looks like has just goo on top of it. It's just something into there. You put something on top of there. Okay, so when throat culture, they're putting it on there to see if there's what's growing in your throat. Okay, but if you want to grow some kind of a microorganism, then you put it onto like a petri dish, and then you see what happens. Okay, now what happens if it's not. It looks like it's just Vaseline, but it's really other stuff in there. What happens if it's made from animal products? Okay? So does that have, what's the status of the stuff that grows on top of that? Does it have that, come up with that status also? Or do you say, no, it has no shaykhs, it's just growing on top of it. It has nothing to do with what's on the bottom there. Okay? Now, the same shayla, that's the part we're going to focus on. The same shayla really goes in the opposite direction also. What happens if the substrate is complete heter, but when you put on top of it is isser? Okay, the case I gave you till now, where at the bottom was the potential isser, was the chametz or the treif, and what you put on top of it was like nothing. What happens if it's the other way around? I mean, there's two examples of that. One is something called cordyceps. Cordyceps is something that grows, a fungus that grows on the top of a kind of a worm. Okay, and if you get them out in the wild, I mean, it's to all appearances, it appears, the pashtus, as we've talked about this before, and it appears to be that it's a worm, and it's treif. But what people who want to grow it will take some of that fungus and put it onto a petri dish, grow it on something else. So the thing that they started with was the isser, but it grew on something that was complete heter. Okay, or a similar thing is one of the ways to make parts of the shaila of making artificial meat is that they take cells from an animal that's treif, like an avela, and they avim and a chai, and they take it and they put it into, they grow it then on ingredients that are completely heter. Okay, so here this is the opposite of the original cases I told you. The original cases I told you was that the base is the isser or the chametz, and you put on top of it heter, and now it grows. And I'm telling you now the opposite case is what happens if the base is heter, but what you put on top of it was isser. Okay, so we're going to talk this whole discussion. This is also for just explaining to you the question. Is going to be two parts. Today I'm going to talk to you about what's the status what's the inherent status of the stuff that grows on top of it. Okay, that's today's discussion. Next time is going to be about, okay, let's say it's completely mutter. Let's say the stuff that grows on top is mutter, and I'm going to tell you today why it's potentially mutter. But what happens when you're finished and you're ready to take off the stuff that you want to take off the koji fermentation, you want to get that stuff off the top, you want to get like lactate, okay, you want to get that off the top, but when you do that, as part of the process, some of the wheat on the bottom gets mixed into it. Okay, it gets temporarily mixed into it, and eventually you get filtered out. We're going to get to Shaila Efshel Seichtei of what happens to the fact that you temporarily had chametz mixed into it, and then by the time you're finished, there's no chametz left in there at all. Okay, so today is the beginning of that. Is what's the status of the stuff on the top? If we could say the stuff on the top is mutter, okay, but what happens if some of it mixes with the stuff on the bottom before it gets separated, and then eventually gets separated? Is that Efshel Seichtei? That's next time, and that's what has to do with Siman Kovav. Okay, everything else I have to say had nothing to do with Siman Kovav. Okay, so let's think about the thing itself. What would be the possible? I have 4 possible reasons why the thing should be asur. Okay, the first 2 are very related, very connected.
Again, you're talking when the top is asur?
Top is asur. With the top, the top is mutter. The top is mutter. Okay, which is the typical case, like it's lactate. Okay, that's why they make lactate. That's why you've heard on Pesach you not see lactate because it's made by koji fermentation that grows on top of wheat. That's why people don't use lactate on Pesach. And there's other things that are made like that also. It's not the only thing.
It's a mushroom grew on the horn of a treif animal. We call that yotzei min hatamei.
So that's exactly what we're going to talk about. Okay, should it be mutter asur? Does that make a difference or not? So I have 4 possible reasons. We're going to go through them. The first 2 I told you are very connected to each other. One is if maybe we should look at it as this is a expansion, and the version 2 is something that grew out of the isser. Okay, a third choice is maybe it should be a yotzei from the isser, and then the fourth is going to be maybe it could be niskadol kayamav, nispat kayamav from isser. Okay, we'll go through them. What?
What's the fourth?
Nispat kayameha from isuri hana. Okay, that's what we're going to talk about. Okay, so the first is like this. The first choices are that maybe it grew from the isser, or it's an expansion of the isser itself also. Okay, so in fact that's a din. And that is like this. If someone takes a onion or a piece of wheat, which is isser, like it's tevel or it's ma'aser sheni, and he plants it in the ground, and now something grows out of that. What's the din of what grew out of it? Okay, I took wheat that was tevel and I put it into the ground, and now grows a stalk of wheat. Is that stalk mutter or is it asur? Okay, or is ma'aser sheni? I put an onion in, and it gets bigger. What? Okay, so what did you say? Very good. So what's the din? When I wrote this, it wasn't that tafyim, and I don't want tafyim either. I'm sorry, but what's the din? So the din is the ikar din is in the general rules. There's a lot of exceptions. I'll tell you exceptions in a second. The general rule is things that grow out of isser is mutter. Okay, even if it's ein zara kala, even if the original stays there. Okay, that's the difference between the onion case and the wheat case. In the case of the wheat kernel completely disintegrates. Okay, the new stalk that grows out of it, the old stalk is gone. It's not there anymore. As opposed to the onion, it ain't zarikol. It just gets bigger and bigger. Okay, the original onion is still there, it just gets bigger and bigger as it grows. Okay, so the din is the ikar din is that it's complete, that it's mutter. Gidulim are mutter. And the Chazon Ish says that's because it's like pan chadash balakan. The new stalk that grew out of it has like unconnected to the as if unconnected to the original. Okay, so it's possible. It's if so. Therefore, we to say that it just grew out of it. To say that this grew out of that is not going to be a reason. Not a reason to be usher. Okay. Now you should know it's usher to do it l'chatchila. It's usher to plant things that are usher with the hope of getting something mutter out of it afterwards. But if it was done, it would be mutter. Okay. No, but there's a bunch of exceptions to that rule. Okay. So two of the exceptions are truma, tevel, ma'aser sheni, bikurim. Okay. There's a bunch of exceptions. And those are all, the reason why those are usher is midrabanan. Gedulei truma is usher, but it's also midrabanan. Because be'etzim is not usher. It's only usher midrabanan because Chazal will concern what's going to happen if I'm a kohen, I'm a kohen, and you give me my truma. And for me, I know that if I plant this wheat, everything that grows out of it is not going to be truma, it won't have din of truma. Okay, so what I'll do is I'm going to hold on to this wheat that you gave me. I don't want to eat it as truma. I'll hold on to the wheat that you gave me. When it comes the right time of the year, I'll plant it, and then I'll do truma. That'll be mutter. Okay, so that's waiting for a problem to happen. Okay, me holding on to the truma and not using it is just waiting for someone to do the wrong thing with it. So Chazal made it aser gedulei truma aser midrabanan to make sure that the kohen doesn't hold on to it. And the same with tevel.
They make it aser. They made it truma, right?
Right, truma is truma. Right. I'm saying they said. I'm saying you're right. I'm saying they don't make it usher. They said it has the same status. It doesn't have the regular din, which should be that gedulin should be mutter. Instead, they said it just has the din of whatever it is. And the same also for tevel, it has the din as if it has truma built into it, like that also. Okay. The Tosfos says, but there's another exception, and that's what's important to us. Another exception is arla. He says if you plant arla be'etzem, it should be gedulim should be mutter also. There should not be a problem. But Tosfos says but the reason why arla is different is because arla is asa b'hana. So even though the gedulim don't have the din of arla because they're not inherently asa, because gedulim of things that grow don't have that din, but it's considered that you had hana from the arla, and therefore what grows is asa not because it's arla per se, but it's because having hana from the arla, and therefore it's asa also. Okay, and that's going to be relevant to us because that means is if we would say that these are gedulim, which is not for sure, but even if we would say it's gidulim of Isser, let's say you had it on treif, that would be okay. But if it grew on chametz asabana. So potentially, I'm going to talk to you more in a minute about that. Potentially, we have a problem here because if it grows on something that's asabana, like basa b'chalav, not so common to have basa b'chalav that's asabana. But if it grew on basa b'chalav or if it grew on chametz, which is very common, then we should potentially have a problem because of an Isser hana. Okay, we say gidulim inherently gidulim are mutter, but gidulim that grow on isuri hana are also from a side, not because of the gidulim per se, because it's considered to be having hana. Okay, and I'm going to get back to that sort of in a minute. Okay, so let's go to another thing. Another possible reason is that it should be awesome because of yotze. Okay, the din is yotze and a tameh is tameh. Something that comes from the treif is treif also. So if the thing on the bottom was wheat, okay, this is chametz stick. So then what grows out of it is yotze from the chametz. Yotze and the chametz should be have the din of chametz also. Okay, that's another possible reason why it should be awesome. Okay,
do we find the din of yotze by anything besides the balchai?
Very good. So the two good reasons why it doesn't have din of yotze, and the first is because there's a machlokes in achronim whether the din of yotze applies to non-living things like plant materials. Okay, the din of yotze comes from psukim that talk about from limudim that have to do with eggs and milk. Okay, they come from living things. So some of the Minchas Baruch says same thing. Doesn't make a difference what it comes from. Yotzim and Tamei Tamei makes a difference what it comes from. Okay, but the Stipler says and Karanora says, Reshachta says that it makes a difference. I'm sorry, that it's only from living things. There's no makar to say that that things that are non-living should have the din of yotze. So if you have yotze from chametz, doesn't have the din of chametz. Okay, no such thing. Yotze and aser. He says that the way Reshachta said it was it's only things that are like milk and eggs, which is the cases we'll make the limudim from. Otherwise, there's no such thing. Okay, and this rise back. There's a whole to do in the achronim whether there's such a thing like that. Whether there's a problem of yotze from non-food, from non-living things. Okay, but a more basic reason why there's no problem with yotze is because everything that's a yotze has this big exception, which is that yotze is only usher if what comes out is edible. If what comes out is pirsha, if what comes out is like literally pirsha means excrement. Okay, so what comes out is considered pirsha, then it's not considered. Then it doesn't have the din of yotze. And that determination whether something is Pirsha or not is not like regular things that is something is Royal Achila or not Royal Achila. The way we decide something is Pirsha is if at the time that it left the Isser, at that moment, was it Royal Achila. The fact that it's become Royal Achila in the future makes no difference. It has to be Royal Achila at that point, like milk. When you milk the cow, the milk is ready to eat, or the egg comes out of a chicken, it's ready to use. Okay, it has to be cooked, but it's ready to go. Okay, but if something comes out at the time it leaves the animal, it's not Royal Achila, like shellac. Okay, that's why shellac is mutter. Moshe explains. Shellac, when it leaves the bug, it's not Royal Achila. The fact that later I can find some use and find some way to make it Royal Achila doesn't make a difference. So over here also, what's growing on top of the wheat bran is mold. Okay, what it looks like, everybody looks at it and says it looks like mold. Okay, it has no obvious food use to it, and everyone looks at it and says this is Pirsha. The fact that I can later play around with it and find something to do with it, that's not enough to make it considered Yetei.
If you can tell me you change it after into something else, and then you put it into the food, I understand. But if you put it as is into the food,
so you think that it is okay? I'm
by itself it's not so salt. No one eats salt by itself. It's also Pirsha. Oh my! You put it into the food, you know.
Okay, I'm not sure if that's correct. I'm comparing it to shellac. Okay, I'm not sure how much else happens to shellac after you take it off the tree before you turn it into something usable. What do? You just put it into your kidneys like that? I'm not sure. When you look at it, this thing, the thing has no connection to food. You're saying is, well, I have to take it as is. Okay, I'm not sure. Okay, last is, should we say that it's nispat makol yamel? Okay, that the Ramah says that if you have an animal that the only thing it ever ate was Isser, okay, that's all it ever ate was Isser.
Where's this from?
Siman Samach. If it's nispat makol yamel, it's in halachas of animals. If it's nispat makol yamel, then the animal becomes Asr, and the Shach says it's not true. The Shach says it's only if it ate Isuri Hana. Okay, only if it ate Isuri Hana. Okay, and I believe that most follow the Shach that it's only if it's Isuri Hana. Okay, so that means to say is if we ignore the Ramah, so that means is for most of these cases we wouldn't be worried about nispat makol, something that grew completely from Isser. But again, back to our chametz case. That's why we come back to chametz. Is what happens if this koji fermentation happened on top of chametz? That's isuri hana. So then we have this problem. Okay, if the thing completely grew out of the mamish nispat makol, it's a thing that we know. The only yesterday there was nothing here. Today it's here, and it's only here because of the chametz that was underneath it. Okay, so Rabbi Shechter, when he talked about this, he compared nispat makol yameha to another rule we have. Just help us for the details of it. There's a din of yesh shvach eitzim pas. Okay, if you take wood from a avodah zarah and you bake bread in that wood, and you make a fire out of that wood, and then you bake bread in it. So the din is the bread that you make out of it is asur because it's considered to have hana. You had hana from the wood. So he said, and that's the same kind of idea of nispat makol yameha. There's such a big connection. There's no wood in the bread. Okay, and there's no. The fact that the animal ate only Isser, that food that it ate is gone. Okay, the food is gone. But it had such a big effect on this thing. It's so directly connected. This animal, all it ate its whole life was Isser. Or the bread was made from this wood, was baked with this wood. It has such a strong connection that's considered to have Hana. Even though it's not inherent, it's not really connected. Okay, so, but the exception is, by Yesh Shvach Eitzim Lepeas, is if you use Gechol Oimimois, you had wood that was coals that were basically burnt out. Okay, they're barely lit at all anymore. Then it's too disconnected. Okay, it's disconnected. So, and on that, Rabbi Shechter built his nafkamin like this. He says, if what grew on the Isser is a thing that we use itself, like by the lactate, is what we use it itself, that's nispat makol yameha. He thought that would be Asr. Okay, if the thing underneath was Isuri Hana, like chametz, then it's considered nispat makol yameha, and it would be asur to use that. That would be asur. If, however, the thing that grows on that is not what we use, it's only a step towards something else that we're going to use. And the example was, I hope I pronounce this correctly. There's a microorganism called Aspergillus niger. Okay, I don't know if I probably didn't pronounce that right. And that is used to turn, it's an important microorganism. It turns glucose into citric acid. Okay, if you have this, I told you, like a big soup of glucose and you want to make it into citric acid. So if this Aspergillus nihlus, I don't know if I pronounced it right, grew on chametz, he says no one's eating the thing itself. It's only a step towards making something else. Then the citric acid is too removed from the isser. It's like Gecholm Oimimos is too far removed to say that you're having hanor from it.
If you grew that microorganism on chametz, and then you use that to make
citric acid, then the citric acid would be mutter. Okay, see, that's too far. That's like Gecholm Oimimos. It's too far removed from the isser. If you eat
this thing was made before Pesach. No, I mean, even if you hold the chametz, it's the whole year, but also I know it's not.
So very good, David. You're very good. You turn my next page. The wheat bran that it grew on.
Oh, it grew on
wheat. It grew on wheat bran. So in this, Rav Shach pointed out further, like this. He said,
but the Haramah, they say it's Kavi chametz. Don't they say this?
I'm getting to chametz in a second. I'm getting to what you probably mean in a second. Okay, and like this, this din that Gecholm Oimimos is mutter, Gecholm Oimimos is mutter, which means if it's indirect, that it says that's only mutter if it happened before Pesach. If it happened on Pesach, where chametz is also b'mashu, and there's an actual Isra on those days, for that would be also even Gecholm Oimimos. Okay, so that's enough gemina. If it was Nespat Mekoyim with, or it was.
There is Nespat Mekoyim on chametz mamish, but it's mutter but not. Even if you hold the chametz, it's the whole year. Understand that. But again, we need the mitzvah of Yisrael not. Right now it's mutter but not.
Right now,
now it's Pesach.
No, if it's Pesach,
no, it was made before.
That's right.
But right now I'm eating something that grew totally from chametz.
Correct. So that's how they split it. If it had from the spot Mekoyameha, then it's also even if that happened before Pesach. So that's a real hana. So that's I'm going to get to the Chayadim says. Chayadim like this. Chayadim I'll skip it. The Chayadim is talking about whether you're allowed to eat milk from a cow that ate chametz his whole life. Okay. That's where the shiloh. What you told. What you say?
When are you milking the cow?
So you're milking the cow on Pesach.
You certainly didn't feed the chametz on Pesach.
You're milking the cow on Pesach. No, you fed him. He ate. No, he fed him on Pesach. He kept on eating like that. So
he was feeding them chametz on Pesach. You can't do that.
So I did it. No.
So the point. It's not your cow. So the Chayadim says like this. The Chayadim says it's actually Nishvasad. He says like this. He says it's not possible that the cow ate. That the cow ate chametz his whole life and only did that on Pesach. Okay, a cow that only ate chametz on Pesach, if his whole life was only on Pesach, you wouldn't be milking him. Okay, cows, you can't. If a cow was born on the first day of Pesach, you wouldn't be milking him before the end of Pesach, right? A little too short for that to happen. To Elamai, he ate some of his chametz before Pesach also, right? Obviously, right? He's a year old or 2 years old, however old he is before he is able to be milked. He says so. That's not nespat mekoyim because some of its eating was during times that were chametz was mutter. Okay, so that's not an isser. He said that's considered not nespat mekoyim. So that's not an example. So in our case also the
lactate was made before Pesach.
So the lactate was made for Pesach, but there it was made on chametz the whole.
So what? But the chametz.
So what?
So I'm like makes sense. I'm going to have to rethink this. No, I'll tell you what, because I'll have to let me think it through, because he said, okay, I don't remember. I thought I'm going to have to look at it again. I thought Rav Shachta said that's only for cases where it's indirect, where it was by the Yeshva with the Gecholm. I might be wrong about that. Okay, so I'm going to have to leave you hanging on that one. Okay, so that's what our shayla is going to depend on, how we figure out that part of the answer, and I'll have to rethink that part. I thought he only said that for the specific case where it was indirect, where the thing, what grows you're not going to eat, and you can only eat the citric acid that's made from it afterwards. But if it's a thing itself, I thought he said that was us. But I might be wrong. I'm going to have to look at that again. So we're leaving. I'm finishing today's part, partially hanging, talking about what we're trying to figure out today whether it should be mutter or asa, the thing itself that grew. Okay, but next time we're going to talk about. Let's say we walked at it today. David for sure walking at it, saying yes, it's mutter what grew on there. It's even though it grew on Isser, it's going to be mutter no matter what. Next time we're going to talk about is okay, but as part of the separation, you have to now separate what you want from what you don't want, And then we have a question of Efshel Soichel, that maybe some of that Isser got mixed in with the Heter, so then I can't eat it because of that stuff that's mixed in, not because of the thing itself.
I'll bring it right from the CRC.
Okay.
The CRC used to, when you send that for the companies that would make dairy stuff for Pesach, especially milk for Pesach, a long time ago, Kushner Shalom, way back, it said in instructions, tell the farmers not to feed the animals soaked feed.
Okay.
Now, our policy was we only certify stuff that was done boiled milk before Pesach.
Correct.
Okay, so that's a raya. I took that out. Because they wouldn't tell me the farmers to do anything. So I don't even know what soaked feed is exactly.
I'll give it to an example when the CRC was like 50 years ago.
Okay.
But anyway, so even though the milk had to be done before Pesach, we didn't supervise anything. It was on Pesach. They didn't want soaked feed.
Right.
So that's a raya. Even if if it would be chach, at least that it would be kulei chametz, that it was there'd be some way to make it usher. Right? There was no possibility to make it usher because it was before Pesach. Chametz not usher barno. There'd be totally nothing to this. Yeah. So.
Sorry that